So, John, should I actually be thinking about an M4 Max MacBook Pro if I want to use this new machine, MacBook Pro for AI? Would
Well,
that be an advantage?
the short answer is yes.
Yeah,
But
I'm looking at the specs, a 32 core GPU for M4 Max.
If I
the,
may not run 20
yeah,
cell stuff, but I would actually buy a M4 Mac Mini for testing purposes and to run your models and have a
Yeah,
different machine.
I need
So,
to replace my MacBook Pro, unfortunately.
uh,
So it's going to be nice to see you, Doug.
yeah, I think the Mac Minis now, basically price wise, I mean, you can't get that much RAM. That's the only issue, and there
Yeah.
potentially might be something coming out of Turbo, where it's maybe a bit more punchy in terms of the RAM.
Mhm.
Um, but spending 2K on a MacBook Pro just to have the RAM to be able to run LM models on your machine, I think is a bit much.
Yeah.
I think
Who
we should.
knows? Maybe I may be showing something that gives some answers on that.
indeed,
Thank
that's
you.
why we're all pleased
Good.
you've turned up, Ian. Because
Yes, we were waiting for you.
we are building the questions for the end, and then obviously the point is we're going to do some stuff, and then there's lots of time to ask questions of the people who've presented and or share knowledge.
Yeah.
And at very least build a list of questions so that you all can go and find out people for the next FMBug who can
Absolutely.
present on them.
Absolutely. On which point, welcome to this one. We'll kick off officially. Now we've got quite a few people. I'm just really going to pass you over to John, who's kind of partly his idea to start to do the one now rather than at the beginning of the month, and a few other people suggested that as well before the release of 2025. So now we get a chance, and John suggested it would be good for those who have more experience with it, particularly those in the ETS, giving their experience with 2025, which probably not the rest of us have had or had the opportunity to play with quite as much. So John, I'm going to pass over to you.
Okay, so let's go to click share button. Should be able to. So my chosen method of presenting tonight is mostly a text file rather than presentation files. It's a set of notes. I've got some screenshots to show people, but obviously our one piece of news for this session is, hey, there's a brand new version of FileMaker if you haven't already seen that and downloaded it. But obviously not everybody gets a chance to download it straight away and or play with it. And when you and I talked about it, people like Ian and I and Doug to a great degree as well have been poking this for several months, and therefore already have our favorite things that we want to talk about. I'm not going to say anything about AI because Ian's here and he's going to do some stuff on that after me. I'm going to look at lots of the other things, some of which Doug has mentioned at our last couple of meetings, but now we can actually sort of show them and talk about why some of them are brilliant rather than just saying, hey, it's a feature that's here, because there's a lot of stuff in this release. There's a lot of stuff for AI and there's a lot of stuff. Let's start with elephant in the room time.
Just before you do that,
Yeah,
John,
go on.
just to say that Doug's going to talk about his view and studio at the end as well.
I saw that. I'm absolutely aware of that, so I'm not covering that either. Elephant in the room time. For those who are supporting Windows, is that the installer will remove your previous versions of FileMaker and just leave FileMaker 2025. And that was a little bit of a surprise to some people. But, so some of these things that are links, I'll put them in the chat after I've finished this session so you can copy them yourself. There is, in a very weird kind of way, an officially published but officially not supported way to get around this. Okay, so Claris have put something on the website that says, hey, here's how you might want to get around it to be able to keep other versions. There would be good reasons for doing that, like if you are trying to test something for somebody, but you can't afford, you don't necessarily have a second machine to run things on. But in general, now that hopefully the issues that were in previous versions are fixed, we're now back as well to short lifespan. So on a Mac, supported OSs are 14 and 15. And the other thing that people have suddenly gone is, oh, I can't connect to my server, because you can't connect to server 2025 with 20 or 21. Oh, yes, with version 20 / whatever that was, 2023. So it's literally this version and the previous version can connect to the server. Moral of the story is test things before you just go and roll them out to your users, because they may. But obviously, one of the big changes is that now the user can go, hey, is there a new version? And starting from now, they'll be able to go, hey, I'll just download it. And we need to begin to understand what are the implications of doing that. Use the assisted install more so that we turn that off. So I think that's a good place to start. Lots of blog posts, people have written up things. Good place to start is obviously on the Claris site, where there's a lot of documentation, including a raft of recent community live sessions, hour-long sessions. If you have 4 or 5 hours to spare watching bits of video, other people have been very active on that front. Are Soliant, DB Services, and Fabrice wrote a great thing on One More Thing. There is a collection, if you don't know of FM Forums, which has been around for a very long time, Stephen Delensky runs it. There's a page on there in which lots of the various blogs and sessions are collected. I think that's a good place to start. So it's FM Forums / blogs. The other thing that's happened is suddenly there's a whole raft of new tools starting to come out for FileMaker, particularly around the desire and maybe move to how do we start to manage our coding using some form of source control. So there are 2 things. The first one is free, which is a guy in Norway who has done something which is parsing the DDR XML. Obviously, that's a short-term thing, because eventually we're all aware that's going to end up being deprecated and going away. But he's able to pull things out of DDR. For instance, create a folder and loads of files in the folder, and each file is a custom function or is a script. So if you want to save your code to reuse, that may be a good tool. Vince just announced the other week, that Inspector Pro 9 is A, now available, B, now free, which is quite a massive thing.
He's going to be talking at the next FMBug and presenting his Pro.
I'm sure he is. He's just done a big thing at one of the American groups for like an hour and a half talking. I think he can talk for 2 or 3 hours about what it can do. But still worth going and just looking. It's properly free to download. And then something new that's come out of the woodwork, some people at ABAX. So makerlabs.abax.pro. They're developing what looks initially like an online method of taking your save as XML output, doing something with GitHub with it, being able to compare things. I think that's going to be, you're going to need to try it and see what it's doing. It's very early stages. They've just like launched it. Hey, it's in beta, you can play with it. No idea about what kind of price they're going to eventually charge for it. And obviously one of the issues behind that is if you've got loads of massive XML, then sending that up and down to the internet just because you can have it on GitHub isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. And we have to start being more careful as developers about what we put in other places. If our code contains things that are usernames and passwords, for instance, then we probably shouldn't be putting our code somewhere that it might get seen or broken into. So, new version, loads of blog posts, loads of videos and sessions, and some new tools. So, first thing we see when you go into, so 50% of what I'm about to say in the first 5 minutes is, hey, this is like this if you're on a Mac. Obviously, Claris announced some time ago that in terms of, there's a hierarchy for servers. Linux is going to get love first, followed by Mac, followed by Windows. FileMaker Pro, Mac is going to get all the love first, followed by Windows. That's just the way it is. So some of the things we have here are beautiful on Mac and not necessarily even on Windows. But if you haven't already hidden it, when you first open FileMaker Pro, new version, there is now this banner at the top, which you can hide, which the green button takes you to this website that says, hey, how to set up Studio and connect, because obviously now it's properly included in your license. If you have like a proper license that is a annual or with maintenance, and you don't have to go through a rigmarole of asking for permission to get an account for Studio. You can basically go and it's on FreeVend. This page that link points to tells you exactly how to do that. It has to be done by the person with the email address who has the contract. So we can't do it necessarily for our clients, but we can at least say, here's a page to walk through, go off and make that happen. And Doug's going to talk about some of the beautiful things in Studio coming up. So then we arrive at the opening screen, which I actually think, personally, I think this is really beautiful. I think it's the whole slightly minimalist thing. We had a bit of a fight about how big those icons were going to be. I think we've arrived at something that's reasonable. But I think it makes the entry into FileMaker for people who've never been there before fresh, business-like. I would suggest you learn how to put icons on your files so that they're not all green Fs, just for this purpose. One thing that's not intuitive here at all, lots of people asking about it. So these are the tiles in my favorites. If I right-click them, there is no right-click menu here. So if you want to remove one, you have to select it and then hit the delete button. Not obvious, because people were going, oh, there's no menu to delete it. Just select one and hit delete, and it will go away. And obviously you can add things back. So that's our first way in. The next big thing is about the toolbars. Toolbar at the top and inspector panels on the right-hand side. So if you haven't caught up, what has happened is on a Mac, all the icons are now somewhat changed. Not radically, but then they are now all icons are inside the San Francisco font, which Apple uses in lots of other places. It makes the app, the basic program, look a lot more like Keynote and Numbers in terms of similar icons. And two screenshots on the side. Let me make it full screen so people can see them. Just move all of you out of the way. One of the big things to notice is for a man of a certain age, now all of those numbers in the boxes that we have to type into and the positions and sizes are slightly bigger, which means there's a lot less squinting going on in my office or when I take my MacBook Air out. I think it's an absolutely brilliant thing. But the whole of the panel has just been redesigned ever so slightly. Again, icons have just changed, a little bit more grouping. it just makes it look fresh. It also means it's not as familiar as it was 3 months ago. All the things that we knew where it was and how it looked. We'll have to learn what the new button icons are. Equally, this is the second panel. So these numbers where we're typing in padding, but things like the font names, font sizes, all of these drop downs have just changed very slightly. Again, in my view, it makes the whole thing just a little fresher when you get a refresh of the whole interface. But the big thing here is that the toolbar at the top is now fully customizable. We have a lot more options about what we do have on the toolbar and don't have on the toolbar, which then means if you've got 3 or 4 machines, you have to remember to go and customize your toolbars the same on all the machines, so that the same buttons appear in the same place, so we don't struggle with muscle memory. Big one is in browse mode. We have buttons to open the data viewer and open the debugger as a button on the menu, so a button on the toolbar. Instead of having to go into a menu, turn on the script debugger, then hit a button to run the script, just click a button, click another button. Again, simple, but ever so good for productivity. Let me escape from that, go back to there. So customizable things, scripts. Let me move you all out of the way again. Where am I going to put you? So let's go back into there. If you haven't seen this, some of the things here are not totally intuitive. So if you have anything that has a beginning and an end in a script, like if steps or loop steps, you can now collapse that set of things that are in the middle. So on the right hand side, here's what it looks like with, here's an if, and it's got several things after it. If you collapse that, then that's what it looks like on the left. You have the icon with a kind of right facing arrow, so if you click that, it expands. If you command click on any of those icons, it opens or closes all of them in one go. So if you write complex scripts, it's a good way just to keep skinning it down so you don't have to scroll through all of 800 lines. The counterintuitive thing is, if you have nothing collapsed and then you move your cursor over the script steps, those buttons all disappear and your first reaction is it's broken. But they come back when you hover over this grey bit. So if you don't see it straight off, you have to hover your mouse over this grey column to make it work. It's a small thing, but I think it's a good thing. This next thing we're going to show, I think, is brilliant. So hopefully we all know that we can drag a CSV file onto the FileMaker icon and just have it turn into a table. It's unfortunately, the table is unfortunately named with the name of the file, which can be really complicated. But in FileMaker 2025 or 22, depending on what we're going to call it today, the table view that we get presented with now has a new look because some things have automatically been turned on. So the thing that controls what we see is at the bottom. If you right click in any bit of this table view, at the bottom of the thing, of the dialog, are these new options. So turned on is this system appearance item with 3 options: comfortable formatting, which just changes the font size slightly, alternating row colors, which are sort of showing there, although as you can see, I'd like the alternating colors to be green, and it's not actually. But it also turns on row numbers by default if you tick that. So this table view has got row numbers, and the whole thing is just when you see it, it's just a little more gorgeous. But the addition is on a Mac, we're now also using the system highlight color. So this top version was done on the Mac Studio, where the highlight color is blue. The bottom one was done on this Mac Pro, where my highlight color is the purple color. So this color is driven by your Mac system preferences, not by anything that we control from FileMaker. We're gonna look at that in a second to see how some of that actually works. Let's jump back to the really big feature is around handling of JSON. A lot of new functionality, and particularly a lot of brand new speed that absolutely can be measured, driven by a new calculation function that we have, which is JSON parse. So short version of Clay's presentation. So everything in FileMaker in the low-level engine is stored as a piece of text. And when we ask for it, it gets put into a C++ object. So this bit of text, if we want to do some maths on it, this will be converted to a number object, and some numerical things can be done with it. If we bring the piece of text and we want to concatenate it with another piece of text, it will stay as a string, and that will be there. For this version, there is now a new thing on this FileMaker object, which is if you take some JSON and explicitly parse it to say, hey, stop it being text and turn it into something, what it does is it turns it into technically a map. So that's key value pairs as a map, which is stored as a binary object on this C++ object. So there are 2 blog posts there, which we'll put up later, about what some of the performance enhancements are. But what that means is that in the good old days, when you met a piece of JSON and said, hey, can I get something from this? FileMaker parsed it as text to work out what it was. And then the next minute, when you asked for something else, it threw that away and did it all over again, because it only had one place to store it. Now, everything you have retrieved or are looking at, whether that's mostly by setting a variable, on that object is a parsed piece of JSON. So 2 bonuses there. Once you have done that initial action of parsing it, you never have to do that again. And because it's a map, like a phone book, you can just go and, it's like effectively a map is indexed. You can just go and find a bit from it at high speed. So the advantage there is around, first of all, not keeping on running a parse on a big object of text. Once you've done it, it's then there. And therefore, then the speed of recovering the pieces from it are significantly improved. So if you get back or use very large JSON objects from web services with thousands of records in it, once it's parsed, it's now really quick to loop through that, saying, hey, I'll have the first index and the second and the third and the fourth. It's a lot quicker than the methods that were there before. It also will help now, given that we're all using JSON to pass things round from one script to another. It's going to speed up all of that. Those 2 blog posts go into a bit of detail about some of the measured performance improvements. The sister to the JSON parse is something that says, hey, here's a thing, what is its state? And the 3 possible states that it are is there's an error with it, it's not good JSON, it's not parsed at all, or it's one of the JSON types. So it's an object, it's an array, it's just a string or a number. So if you need to know, then this JSON parsed state will tell you what that tell you what that is. My favorite thing in the world, obviously, is OData. Other people may have other things they love. So we are going to show you this. When you get the metadata back from an OData, just from basic OData, so this is literally, here's a table, here's the metadata. We now get access to the internal, that's the FileMaker table ID, which is a numeric value, and each field has an FMF ID, FileMaker field ID. So this is a table called clients, but this is its ID. This is a field called table ID, that's its ID. Here's a field called parent ID, that's its ID. Really interesting thing is you can use those table IDs and field IDs in filter and selects. So what that means is that if somebody changes a field name, but you're using the field ID, then all of your code will not break, which might make this a really good thing for building sync solutions or archives. So I'll just highlight that. There's a query which would work. You can't tell what the table name is or what the field names are, but that query absolutely works by replacing, and clearly, if your field name is only 4 or 5 characters long, that's several characters longer. And obviously we have a limit on what the length of a URL. But that, if somebody changed either the table or the field names, that query would still work, which I think is really quite a big thing. We have support for aggregates and groups. So a query might look like this. We want to select this field with something, and that something is things like sum, max, min, as, and to give it another name. I can show a quick demo of a file. Well, I wrote a couple of scripts to make that happen. So here's some simple data. It's got some records on for 2 people. You can see who I wrote the demo for, and some value of something, whether it was a sale or something. So that's the raw data. But I can now say, okay, show me, and what I'm returning here is, I've said show me for one of the people, show me the total sales as something called total sales. At the moment, what we have to do is do a query, get back loads of data, get back the data that's effectively raw, and then post-process it. Here we can go, oh, tell you what, just give it me back, but also give it me back as a field name that makes sense to me. And what works rather beautifully is being able to group that. So this customer called John, the maximum sale was that amount of money, and the total sales was that amount of money. For this other customer, their maximum sale was this, and the total sales were that. So that's one query that's doing our maths for us. I think that's very powerful. Additionally, with OData, if you uploaded a file using OData, it would just be called, well, it wouldn't be called anything really. Now we can specify the file name when we update. Oh, and now, really exciting demo. So, tiny little script in here that will show what's happening, and then there's a demo file to point you to. So, we now have this brand new thing, which is a calculation which says, get the record IDs from the found set. Okay. So run the script, it just says, there you go. I'm looking at this table. There's the record IDs. Those record IDs, in a moment we can talk about how there's several ways for those to be returned to you. Those are record IDs. They're also in the sorted order that you're currently looking at. So that is record 4, followed by 7, followed by 4, 5, 6, and then followed by 3. If I, let me cancel that. If I just change this sort order and run that script again, then the records are presented to me in the order that they're now presented on my screen. So now it's record 3, followed by 6, followed by 5, followed by 4, followed by 7. And you can take that list of IDs. Let's look at what the other half of the script is doing. Then the corollary to that, that's the right word, is we can go to that list of records using a layout that uses the same table in a new window if we like. So if I just switch to this layout to make that work better, here's a list of records I want to look at. What that script is going to do is go, oh, here's the IDs of those records. I'm just showing it to you. And here's a little window with those records presented to you. They are in the same order as the base data. What you can do with that, just really quickly, if you try and be clever and go, let me send something empty, then what I'm going to get is a 401 error, which is, hey, records can't be found. So the big thing that's happening here is that FileMaker is doing a search, but it's not doing a search on our data. It's doing a search on the record IDs. So it's not talking to the back-end database in that sense. It's just going, hey, I want record IDs called this. Could you just bring them up? As a result, it's very fast. We could store that list of records that we just found and pass it off to somebody, or use it in another way, or once we've built that on the basis of a really complex find we've done for somebody, we could save it and put it onto a button and say, click this button, it'll just take you back to this set of records. Obviously, the big thing that we can do with it is send that set of records to the server to do something with on a perform script on server script. So we don't have to go through that complicated thing of asking the server to do this search that was the search that we got to where we are. So it's the middle bit of a snapshot link. It's going, hey, here's that set of records, let's use them. And the converse is also true. We can be running a script that happens on the server, and all we do is go, could I just have back that list of IDs, please? And then you can go, tell you what, I've got this list now. Can I just go to that list of records here? So if a server process updates a set of records, we can have immediate access to what that set is. I think the big thing is understanding it doesn't use the data layer. It also, while it brings back the records in the order that they are, so technically sorted, it hasn't done a sort to get there. It's just said, give me the records in that order. So in the top, in the menu bar, when you apply that, it will show that the records are semi-sorted. So they're not unsorted, but they're not sorted. They're sort of sorted. But it does mean, because the sort hasn't been run, that things like any kind of parts which are dependent on sort order, summary parts, won't show because the sort hasn't been run. So you might have to get that set of records and then run the sort to show the summary parts. So nice people at Beeswax have put together a demo file, which is, we'll put the link up, really, really simple. Shows the principle I think we can certainly extend this, and I think it's really powerful and people are going to use it. So I'm going to select a record. I'm going to command select several other records, just sort of randomly down here. And at the bottom, if I can move you all the way again, there's a button which says open that selection in a new window. And there we go, that is that selection in the order that I did it. It's a new window. I need to close the window. In this particular demo, if you click another record, it will remove that set, or I can clear all of the selections. It will work with contiguous sets that I can add to. Very, very smooth. Interesting demo as a way of just getting into this and starting along with it. Quickly, relationship graph. A couple of things in the relationship graph that are worth mentioning. Let me go into here. Now, as we've had field comments for a while, we now have table comments on the table. We don't currently have any way to get those back inside FileMaker, but it does allow us to, when we have some obscure naming convention, to put something more interesting that tells people what's really going on there. And the other thing which is on that demo is I have a calculation field, and now when it's a calculation field, it shows me here what type of field the result is going to be. Previously, I had to click into the options and then look at the little thing in the bottom left-hand side to decide what it was. It's now shown to us in the relationship graph. Tiny things, but all of those things I think we're going to find are going to make our life a lot easier. Some more features. Get text from PDF. Absolutely depends on your PDF. It's not OCR. You have to test with some PDFs and see what results you get back as to whether it's going to be useful or whether it's split the address into 5 things, because that's how the PDF was made. Big thing, replace field contents in a script now has an option. Let's go into here. So when we replace field contents, we say, hey, this is the one thing that we're doing. When I click replace with, there's a new option here, which is to perform auto enter option for fields. If you turn that off and then replace the field contents, it will not trigger modified timestamps and modified names. So it's a way of importing data, cleaning it up while keeping the original modification timestamps. It only works in the scripted version, not when you just stick the field, your cursor in the field and do command equals. It's only in the scripted version. Other changes. Insert text now supports a lot of millions of characters. It's like a ridiculous amount of text. However, you can now stick 4 gig of text into using an insert text, but that absolutely will slow down you saving the file and maybe getting the record, because you can't necessarily move that amount of data in one go. So it's going to increase the number of remote calls that the server may make to your client. So if you have a slow connection, it's worth testing whether that was a real bonus. Sorry, wrong thing. In custom functions, we can now organize our custom functions with folders. Those folders work like folders do in scripts. They're collapsible. What we have lost for the benefit of having that is we now don't have the ability to sort our custom functions by name or creation date or anything like that. A number of people have made some representations about whether that's a good idea, and we'd like it back, please. I wouldn't necessarily put folders in and then open this in FileMaker 2024, because it might not be quite the lovely experience you want. So if somebody's totally in 25 and going forward, absolutely possibly worth doing if you're the kind of obsessive person who really wants to organize everything like mad. That's FileMaker Pro. Server, not going to talk very much about it, except there are some really interesting things in the server. Let's Encrypt is now properly integrated to be able to use that for SSL certificates. WebDirect is a big new bonus, which is that back buttons don't destroy your session in the way that they used to. And installing server will now install the solutions upgrade tool, which has a bit of a typo in it, and will support 2404. I said I'm not going to talk about AI at all, but the big thing is you can run a model server on your FileMaker server. Just don't do it on a server where you have live data. So let me go back to me. Do that. Stop sharing. So that's like a whistle-stop tour of the actual things that are there. The idea of today is we'll show you lots of things. These are things that I've been poking for a while, so know how some of them work, how some of them don't work. Ian's going to do something now about a lot of the AI features. Doug's going to talk about studio features. And then at the end of the session, we can all stay for as long as we like and express our opinions and ask other questions that people may have. So thank you very much. Ian, come back from whatever you're doing and get ready to present.
Just before Ian presents, thank you, John. That was amazing, and some things I was going, oh yes, please, thank you. Thank goodness we got that now in there. Definitely. And plenty to look at. But just before Ian talks, we've got John here if he's listening. John Howell, yes, you are listening, John. He wants to talk about Practice 2025. So I'm going to give him a few moments to talk about that. And before he does that, I'd also like to remind people about Engage You, which I'm sure you've all heard about and know about, and it's brilliant. I will get Johan, he's away at the moment, but I'll get him to talk for the next one about it. Over to you, John, for a moment, or however many moments you need.
Yeah, you got me a little off guard here.
Sorry, it was a bit abrupt.
No, it's okay. Can I share a screen?
Yeah, you should be able to. I think you can, yeah.
You'll see some stuff on my screen, but yeah. I'll try to make it quick. So I went to Pause on Air a number of years in a row, and most recently 3 years in a row in Georgia at that wonderful facility we had at that Jewish summer camp. And I suppose a few of you were there. It was wonderful. And everybody got tired of the facility, and I was looking for an alternative facility for them. And then they just announced they weren't going to do a Pause on Air this year. The hour after I had found a facility in Silicon Valley, literally 8.5 miles from Claris and Apple headquarters. So I'm like, oh, now I have a facility and there's no Pause on Air. And then with a little bit of prayer, to be candid, it came to me that let's just put one on. I'll just gather all my friends and put together an unconference that would be styled somewhat like Pause on Air, and to a large extent like the old FileMaker DevCon of days gone by, where it's not about product marketing, but it's about developers coming together to learn stuff and share their information. So I made 40 phone calls to 40 different developers, and absolutely everybody was on board. So now we have a volunteer team for an event that's happening on October 20th to the 23rd in Los Altos, which is right next to Cupertino, where Apple and Claris are. We have a website put together by Ron Cates in Kentucky that is a FileMaker data-driven website built in WordPress. We have a number of people attending. The website keeps evolving. A little bit of slowness with Zoom. We have pictures of everybody who's going.
You aren't sharing your screen.
I'm not. I thought I said share. I will try it again. That work better?
Yes.
There you go. I'm sorry. I assumed that the buttons went and did it. So anyhow, we have a website now with 17 volunteers on a Slack team building an event that's going to be 3.5, almost 4 days long in Silicon Valley. I'll show you where it is. It's a beautiful facility. We like the thing that we had that Jewish summer camp in Georgia because it was like a religious place, and that just made everybody like behave well and feel kind of like it was cozy and sacred and all that. So it happened that we found this place. It's owned by the Jesuits. Now it's a secular thing. They hold their religious retreats during the weekend and open it to secular people during the week. So this is an absolutely secular event, just happens to be in a cool facility with tons of pictures. It is 40 acres with 4 large meeting rooms and like 14 breakout rooms and room for 100 people to sleep. So we're doing this at cost. We have 17 people on the team. Everybody's a volunteer. We have a few big names and a lot of common developers because this is supposed to be a leveling event for everybody to feel welcome at. The signups keep happening. We have a couple sponsors, and we have let me go to the sessions real quick. We have a sessions page, and the website's not even done. It's being completely built as we go dynamically. But we have 26 sessions here. We actually have 30 sessions, and they're posted here. And you can come and look at any particular one, look at the details of it, or look at the person who's putting it on. On the homepage, there's a news broadcast. We have a grant program, so we're offering scholarships to students and to anybody who can't afford to go. This is done at cost, all volunteer. Nobody's making money at this. I'm like 400 hours into this personally, all doing it for free. It's under $1,000 to go for 3.5 days, which includes room, board, food, attendance, and even you're going to get a nice garment and a journal. Everything at cost, under $1,000. Unless you share a room, then it's like $900. We have a number of videos from different people who are sponsoring or attending, so you can watch a little of it. There's a large one here by Richard Carlton. It goes on for like an hour when we go into great detail about it. All available on the website, which is fullaccess.us. It's also fullaccess.ai. That'll get you there because there's a lot of AI sessions going on, a lot of JSON sessions, a lot of API sessions, a lot of talk about 2025, like John was just talking about. So you can go to fullaccess.us or fullaccess.ai. This here is an app that's meant to work both on FileMaker Go and in WebDirect. That will be on your phone when you get there. It's not completed, but it has mapping, and you can see, what do I want to look at? Just the sessions or the lodging. It has a menu that will let you know what sessions and meetings are going on. This is like the old DevCon to go, but we're calling it Full Access to Go. So even though I'm sharing it on a desktop, this is optimized for iPhones and Androids and iPads, and we're still working on the optimization. And we're using WebDirect to do this here. You can see it. We're using the custom home URL, so I say exit, it goes right to our main website. There's so much to explore here, but we have signups continually. It's inexpensive. It's on October 20th, so we're hoping to get everybody signed up by early October. We're inviting students from 11 universities in the Bay Area, especially computer science students who are going to be looking for work when they graduate. If I look under attending, you can get a sense of some of the people that are going, and this just keeps changing. Details on everybody if they want to share it. They don't have to. They don't have to have a picture, but it can have your email and your logo. So we're being very transparent. This is meant to be, like I said, a leveling event where everybody feels welcome of all levels. Where you're senior, you're famous, you're rich, you're unknown, you're new, you're a student, you just opened FileMaker the first day, or if you're in the middle. And we have, right now it's like we're getting hit with more presentation requests because we're not vetting them than we are actually having attendees. It's going to come to the point where we're going to have so many presentations, we'll have to limit them. We can handle up to 45 presentations at the event in 3.5 days. Happy to take questions. I could go into greater detail. I don't need to. Just want to encourage you all to come. I'm going to every group everywhere in the world and telling people about it. And then, of course, listening to all your wisdom. We're excited about this. It's 90 days away or so. It's 3 months. See, the bottom of the page has a clock that tells me it's 90 days and 21 hours away. I'll let it go at that, but are there any questions or comments, feedback from anybody? And or if you're interested in going, reach out to me. Does that cover it?
Great,
Thoughts,
thank you.
questions? And I would welcome any kind of questions about it.
Anyone have questions?
Silent group.
Well, quite often people don't speak up here, but they speak up afterwards in the virtual bar. So,
Oh, you know, this is what I discovered at Pause on Air. I had a discussion with Chrissy Ferris and John Sindler when we launched this. I said, tell me what to do and what not to do. What ditch could I fall in, or what do I look for? Because my experience is like 80 to 85% of the people that go to Pause on Air are introverts. And Chrissy goes, no, that's not accurate. She goes, it's 80 to 85% of everybody in the Claris community are introverts. That's just the crowd. So we're specifically trying to make an event that welcomes people who are introverted to feel safe and come out, but not push too hard. We have a few really cool things. We're going to have a session on how to give a better presentation at a seminar. And that's going to be like a panel discussion. And we're going to have a number of panel discussions. I know Kevin Frank is coming, Roger Jakes and Vince Manano. If you need name dropping, a bunch of really bright people. But we're trying to make an environment where everybody can feel like welcome, and they could be shy and go for a hike on the 30 acres of hiking trails we got, or come out and drink bourbon and sing along with the jam sessions we're going to have every night at the top of the hill outdoors in the most beautiful setting in all of Silicon Valley. Trying to make it so that people who are shy, who don't like to speak forward, can come there and blossom, or go for a hike and hide, whatever they like.
are you staying for the virtual bar, or are you heading off?
What?
Are
Sorry?
you staying for the virtual bar after this session, or are you heading
I
off?
could. Yeah, I didn't know there was one, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, we basically turn the recording off when we've covered the topics, and
Oh, free drinks too, right?
free virtual drinks.
Yeah, I can wait for that. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, so you may get a few questions then, if no one's got any now, but if they have, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me and listening to all of that. We're very excited about it. There's so many little things I could share that I won't, that are going to make it really fun. I literally have never had so much fun in my life, but doing this.
Well,
It's like a calling.
Hey guys,
Sorry?
plan to make this several times, or is that just a one-time conference, or do you plan to make it again the next years?
The way we're looking at it, if it's successful and it becomes a thing, we're absolutely going to do another one next year. We have an LLC, we have insurance, we have all of that formed. There's a small contingent of Canadians on the West Coast in British Columbia that would like to hold one there. Because they're afraid to come over the border right now. So we may hold it in Canada next year, which would be really cool to have something like that somewhere up around Vancouver on an island or something. We're looking for a facility there right now. I got to tell you, we have a guy named Dean Sewer who's in the FileMaker community who does a lot of work with terminal diseases for young people. He runs a foundation. He's got so much experience putting on conventions for medical issues with children that he's volunteered to come in and do all the recording. So we're going to have like professional recording. We're only going to record the stuff that people agree they're willing to have recorded, so we're not going to violate privacy. But we're going to put as much of this on YouTube when we're done post-event, and then link it to the website as we possibly can feasibly do. We've got a couple. They don't have the best Wi-Fi there in this retreat because it's like a 150-year-old Catholic retreat center. So we're bringing in 2 Starlink dishes and throwing up our own network and kind of really pushing the technology to the limit, along with some fiber optic cable to coordinate. It gets crazy, but it's really quite fun. We're making it technical and just fun. I'll stop there.
Okay.
I'll go to the event after. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Great. If anyone's got any questions, just save them for the virtual bar afterwards if John's around. John, would you mind just turning your screen off for the moment, your screen share? Great, thank you. And straight over to Ian, if you're ready, Ian.
I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Yeah, I don't have a pre-prepared presentation tonight, but there's a few things I'd like to run you through. So I'll just share my screen now and share desktop too. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a couple. I wrote a blog post on on meeting my top features in FileMaker 2025, and I'm going to discuss a couple of them, and I'll go into a bit of detail. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about running the AI server functionality that John alluded to, because there's some fairly important considerations there. So my top 5 features, the perform find by natural language, I think is just amazing. It allows users to type in natural language, and FileMaker converts it into a find and performs it. And you can do this in 2 script steps. It's just amazing. It's brilliant. Really, I love it. Generate text allows us to send queries to large language models, whether they're hosted with OpenAI or Anthropic or Cohere, or whether you're hosting it yourself in the FileMaker or Olama or on Docker or anything else. Semantic search basically will now perform searches on server. And what that means is that it's going to scale much more effectively, that you'll be able to use semantic search with much bigger sets of data. PDF extraction, John mentioned, and go to list of records, John also mentioned. So those are really, really cool. So I'm going to give you a really quick demo of the perform find by natural language to start off with. Right, so what I've got, FileMaker dataset. I used this before for my semantic search examples. It's a fashion dataset that I downloaded from Kaggle.com, and it's basically it's all products that are on a secondhand fashion website. These are all the fields that are there. We've got the description, whole load of other stuff. And so what we can do is if we say we want to find products where the material is wool and the color is pink, I'll say performed by natural language. It's going to take a second. We are dealing with 900,000 records. And actually that wasn't too bad. Possibly because I did this before and everything's cached. However, still pretty good. But what that's done is it's taken my query and it's converted it to FileMaker finds. And the script to do that looks like this. 2 steps. We configure our AI account. In this case, I'm using OpenAI. And I pass in my OpenAI API key. And then we perform find by natural language. We specify our account name. We tell it which model. I'm using the 04 mini model. What is my prompt? And my prompt is this field here. And I'm saying get found set. Now, the option to get found set gives us 3 choices. We can either get found set, and what it does is it goes ahead, performs a find for us. We can do found set as JSON, where it will return the records as JSON, or we can get the find request as JSON. And I'll show you those 2 as well. So if I say get found set as JSON, give me a moment. So it's not changed the found set. What it has done, it's given me basically JSON data for all the records that it found. Now, what it's doing is it's basing the find on what fields are on the layout. So you don't need to worry. If you've got a field on the layout, it will be included in the find. You may need to think carefully about which fields you're, the same as with a user, that if you enable the ability to automatically index, you may not want that because it's going to behave the same. And then the other choice we've got is find as JSON, and that's going to return our find as JSON. And this has got a couple of uses. We can take the result, the JSON that expresses the find, and we can go ahead and we can use it. But the other thing is that this uses the exact same format as the data API does. So if you're trying to work out some code to to search something in the data API, you could actually use this as a shortcut to get you a pretty good head start on what does your JSON need to look like for your find. So I think it's a pretty cool feature. Let's say if we change that a bit and the condition never worn, we'll find that again. Anyway, I absolutely love this feature. I think it's really, really nice. And in this case, we've got 781 records instead of the 1700 or whatever it was. So I think there's going to be a lot of uses for this, that for users who aren't too familiar with FileMaker, that this is going to simplify, because I've seen lots of cases where users they get confused. How do they construct a find? Where do they add omit? How do they, that type of thing? And this can manage all of that. The one thing I will say about this is that it does take a relatively powerful large language model to correctly construct the find. That when I've done experiments on very small models like Gemma 1B or 4B, which are tiny by LLM standards, they're pretty hit or miss as to whether it will work. And I think this is one of the reasons why Claris has given us fairly large requirements in terms of RAM for the server, if we're going to use the FileMaker server functions. So anyway, that's one of them. Kind of zooming along here. If I go over to my next demo here, actually I won't show that now, but let's talk about configuration for a second. We've now got a lot of choices in what we use for large language models behind the scenes in terms of hosting. We've no longer just got Cohere and OpenAI. We can now have FileMaker as a host. FileMaker can list the available models. Oh, great. And of course, as soon as I do a demo in front of somebody else, it breaks. Oh, no, I know what's happened there. That's, sorry. That was, hang on. Right, debugging on the fly. That's never good, is it? Okay, actually, I'm not going to do that. But essentially, FileMaker provides an endpoint that you can query, and it will tell you which models are available. So that's kind of embarrassing that it does that. You can basically assign a FileMaker API key to control who gets access to this. It's disabled by default, but you should enable it as soon as you start using it. You've got OpenAI still as an option, Anthropic is a new option, Cohere is also still an option. You can specify custom models, which gives you the ability to use tools like Olama or Docker or LM Studio as well. And okay, so I go over to my test queries. What I'm doing is I'm using a query. Sorry, I'll back up and tell you what I'm doing before I start that. I'm going to use the going to talk about the generate response from model function. This allows us to query a large language model and to retrieve a response from it. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use this query as an example. So it's essentially it's not a huge query. So it's about a page and a half, well, 2.5 pages of text, basically asking for advice on, how to deal with sort of revising a marketing strategy for a company. So it's not an enormous query, but fairly large. And so what I'm going to do is pass that in. So I'll just duplicate that record and clear it. And I'm going to start out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. My FileMaker server it's a Mac Studio M2 Max. It does not meet the recommended requirements for FileMaker. It's got 32 gigabytes of RAM. So it's still a reasonable size machine. And you can look at the moment, so we've got 7.6 gigabytes of memory used. And what I'll do next is to switch on come here, come to AI services, which is currently stopped. This is all new, the AI services section. Here is the end point for that. It's now running. And it takes a moment. You can see I've got 11 models installed, some of which basically don't work. So some of them it's unhappy with the structure of the model, like the small model. And basically it doesn't seem very happy with 4-bit models. But I've got another, so the models can be either text embedding, image embedding, or text generation. So for what we're going to do, we're going to use text generation models. And come back here. Oh, and I've really broken this now. Okay. Hang on one second. Sorry, because that's coming from a value list. Okay. Can you bear with me 1 second, please? Okay, this is the worst demo I've given in a very long time.
But we'd like to see you fix things, Ian.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what this is called. What is? I do not know why this is beach balling right now. Okay. Actually, so it ran it in Gemma in Olama. Okay, so anyway, that actually ran in Olama using Olama as a server. So that was using Olama connected. I'm running Olama here. So the Olama it's running on is actually on my my MacBook, which is a 16 gigabit MacBook Pro. So you can run some of these models like the 1B model in much smaller memory than you might expect. So but you can see for a query like that, it takes a while. And you can see over here the number of tokens we got. So if I duplicate that, clear that, I'm just going to run that in Gemma 4B. That's going to take a bit longer. That'll probably take about 45 seconds to a minute to run with the Gemma 4B, the larger model. And if I look at my computer, you can see them. You can see with the 4B model and the 16 gigabit machine, you can see the memory pressure is really like it runs, but like it just runs. And this is why the large language models, even the small ones, consume a lot of memory. And the memory is a function of two things. It's a function of the model you're using, and it's also a function of the context size that you pass in. If you pass it, yeah, so 48 seconds, and you can see as soon as that's done, memory pressure just eases up enormously. Yeah, so with the context size that you pass in, the context is essentially, if you view it as the size of the query that you pass in, it goes up so if you double the size of the context you're passing in, the amount of memory required for the context goes up by a factor of 4. So it goes up, the context memory requirement goes up as the square of the the amount of context. And if you bear with me, I will just really quickly try to fix that.
I don't know
I can just...
but I'm learning a lot from watching you do this, Ian.
Sorry, this is really basically I've just got, it's just running from the wrong context. It's basically I think so. Yeah, if I just, so the list models, okay, may as well see that. Essentially, all I'm doing is I'm hitting up the configuration FileMaker endpoint with the models on the end, with a get query, insert from URL. That tells me which models I've got. I look in the result. You can see this is the list of the FileMaker models and the status. Exit the script. And I'm just going to go and skip over that bit. Just come down here. Yeah, this is really bad doing this on the fly. Okay, and if I go, there we are. That's what I was supposed to see. And if I just go to my models, and we can just get rid of that, that, and there's our list of models. Okay, now we're back on track. Apologies for the digression. Okay.
Fascinating.
Right. Anyway, so yeah, so what you can do is you can actually query the FileMaker server. It will tell you which models it is running, which ones are, which ones. So what I've done is to flag the ones that are downloaded and oh, sorry, the ones that are loaded. So the mini LM is the text embedding clip vit. And we've got CodeGenna 7-bit as the default model for text generation. So that is running on this machine here. And right, now we've got that going. Sorry, I really should have just, so we've got this, the model server is running. That's all good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this again, clear it. I'm going to choose one of the FileMaker models. And so right here, Google CodeGenna 7B, that is the default model that FileMaker is recommending. And that really is the one why they're recommending 64 gigs of RAM for your FileMaker server running on a Mac. If you're running on Windows, you need to have an NVIDIA GPU and the requirement is lower. That's because Macs kind of have a shared memory space, whereas the NVIDIA GPU will basically allocate all of its memory to doing this. However, the Mac stuff is much easier to configure because it's built in. At the moment, the Mac M series, the ARM Macs, make really, really good small FileMaker servers. I suspect that a maxed out Mac Mini with 64 gigs of RAM, it's probably going to be pretty good. You'll get a lot done with it, though you will have some limits. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and run this. Okay, that's gone off and that started running. It's not come back immediately and said that something is terribly wrong. And you can see right away that basically the memory used on my server has just leapt up to, 25 gigabytes. There's not a whole lot of memory left there to actually serve FileMaker files. And the other thing is that with models like this, when they run low on memory, they will crash the whole machine. They won't just gracefully crash something. Like basically your whole machine is going to be locked up and go down. And that is not what you want on a FileMaker server. That's why we're recommending very strongly that if you are going to run the FileMaker AI services, that you do it on a separate machine from the one hosting the FileMaker files. While that's running, there is a FileMaker white paper. It basically that it's on the website, running your own AI model server. There's some recommendations there, and there's quite a lengthy white paper. It was primarily written by Wim Decourt and Ernest Coe, but I spent most of the July 4th weekend working with them and Todd and a couple of other people on editing this paper. So there was quite a number of people had input into it, and we did a lot of testing and coming up with the recommendations. So is this finished yet? Yeah, so that's finished. That took 1 minute 40 seconds. And if we look back at our server now, you can see the memories dropped off, but not totally. The other thing you can see is that it totally maxed out the GPUs on the machine, which is actually what you want because they're not doing it. That's what they're there for. So now there's one thing you can do to reduce the amount of memory, and that is to, in the model choice, if I duplicate again and clear, if you use what's referred to as a quantized model. And the thing is, these models, and I'll select a quantized version of the same model. And what quantization does is the models are actually stored in 16-bit. So as a rule of thumb, if you've got a 7 billion parameter model, 7 billion parameters, 16 bits, you can assume that model is going to occupy about 14 to 15 gigabytes of disk space, and it's going to need a minimum of that much memory. A quantized version of the model reduces the model to 8-bit. So with 8-bit quantization, which is what FileMaker supports. So what that's going to do is that's going to reduce the size down to about 7 gigabytes, and it reduces the amount of RAM required when running it as well. The accuracy is going to be reduced somewhat, but that's something that people need to experiment with because there's no hard and fast rule about how much does accuracy reduce. Realistically, with 8-bit quantization, it's probably still going to be pretty good and pretty close. The other thing you'll see here is that you'll see this as an MLX model. MLX is an Apple framework for accelerating machine learning models or large language models. And so this particular model has been converted to an MLX format to accelerate it and also to quantize it. And so if I run that, it'll run a bit faster and it'll consume a bit less RAM. So you can see here, we're now looking at about 19 gigabytes of RAM. So that's quite a bit less memory that model is using to do that. And it is essentially the same model. Results won't be quite as good, but not tremendously different. Jewel, actually, sorry, I didn't ask how much time do I have?
Well, technically, the question is, Doug, how much time do you have? Because Doug's due on nowish, but
is he okay?
No, you can keep on going. It's fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to I'll try not to babble too much then and sort of wrap it up. But yeah, so anyway, you can see here that the quantized model is going to make a big difference. And what we're suggesting is that there's one other thing that I'm sending out quite large queries that take a long time to run. The FileMaker AI serving essentially supports one query at a time. So if you send multiple queries simultaneously, you're going to get queuing. The other thing that will happen is if you send different queries with different models, when the first query is done, it's going to unload that model, load the second model, and then run. Due to the size of the models, swapping models, loading and unloading is fairly slow. So the more you can do things with one model, the better you'll get significantly better performance. Okay, so you've seen that. Now I'll also then show you, in this case, I'll run the Gemma 4B model off FileMaker. And you can see there's going to be quite a difference there in terms of the amount of memory that's used. Well, actually, compared to the MLX model, it's not too much. It is less, but so the model size. Now, the thing is, you can do a lot with I've been using the 4B models a lot on both 16 gigabit and 32 server, which is, a fair chunk less than is recommended. But what I find is that it can do some tasks well, other tasks it can't do. So the perform find by natural language requires a lot of computing horsepower, and it's not going to be able to do that well, or at least I've not found it. I found it works sometimes on simple queries, but not on others. So it's kind of your mileage may vary. And you can see the other thing is that with the model size, that was a lot faster. That query was really, 42 seconds versus, and still pretty good answers. Yeah. So what I did as part of my testing for the white paper was to test all of this with different numbers of tokens. So what I did was I downloaded Moby Dick from the Gutenberg project, and I used that as my input data. And then I basically took varying sizes of chunks of text out of it and asked these models to summarize it in different lengths. So the input tokens are not even numbers because they sort of just fit however many words I chose. But so you can see that with the 1B parameter model took 6 seconds and used 13, and this is running on my Mac Studio server. 13.5 gigabytes of memory to do 1,000 tokens, so approximately 1,000 words. Doubling the number of tokens, double the time, and increase the amount of memory a little bit. And you can see as the number of input tokens increases, the amount of memory is increasing. For the really small models, it doesn't really matter very much. And you can see it reached a point where it eventually got to sort of 15 megabytes. And actually, eventually, it took 16 gigabytes of RAM, but it failed. It just started spouting gibberish. And that's the other thing that can happen. Before the things crash, they frequently just start spouting gibberish at you. So the fact that a model will run in a given size or space does not mean that the answer is actually of any use to you. I didn't assess the quality of the results here, apart from if it was just gibberish or repeated the same word 1,000 times, clearly it was a fail. But you can see that the small models to start off with took that the Gemma 7B was always pretty close to the limit for the computer, that like there's very little. And when I passed in more than 12,600 tokens, it consumed effectively all the RAM on the computer, and it crashed. Like my machine just totally locked up. I basically had to reboot it. And the smaller model, the quantized model at that point, it failed. It failed on the quality, just spouted gibberish. What was interesting with the quantized model is that it seemed the amount of memory seemed to increase quite rapidly. So basically you need to bear in mind how much data you're passing into the models. And the 4B model, actually, I was really, really surprised. It kept on going. It got slower and slower, but I was able to pass in a full. Now, FileMaker said it was 135,000 tokens. It's 128,000 token model. I think that it's because the tokenizer that FileMaker is using is different from the one the model is using, so it's giving a slightly inaccurate representation. That's my suspicion. But so yeah, the 4B model I was able to pass in quite a bit. But if you're using this for the chatbot functionality, like Ronnie showed, you need to bear in mind that as you get more and more memory, you're going to be getting closer and closer to those limits. And that's why Claris has put in that if you're doing the chatbot type functionality, you can say, I only want to keep the 10 most recent historic items. And that's why, because as the context gets bigger and bigger, things are going to get slower and slower. And eventually the server's going to run out of memory. So anyway, that possible a little bit off track. Apologies for the having to do a live debugging session, which was kind of embarrassing. But yeah, I'll just sort of stop there because to be honest, I could babble on for ages. I really do recommend going and reading the white paper on hosting this stuff because it covers a lot of ground, not just hosting, but generally the background on using large language models with FileMaker. So I'll stop using up any more of Doug's time. So are there any questions?
Great. If there's no instant questions, I mean, I have a question, but I can save it. Should we save them for the virtual bar afterwards if you're hanging around in?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. So we'll save that for there. John, did you want to say anything? You're meant to be doing the presenting rather than me, and I jumped in and.
Well, for those who are, if you're not following, I've posted loads of my links into the chat. The white paper that Ian just referenced is in the chat. So before you go, at least click it and save it in your browser and as a bookmark or something. So
yeah.
But the interesting thing with this stuff, Ian, I'm always excited when I do a thing that you're on as well, is you need somebody who's been poking it a lot to. It isn't about the smoothness of the demo. It's about somebody said, "Oh, I did this, and then I tested this, and then I tested this, and then it died." That has just saved all of us about 3 days worth of stuff. But that knowledge is important to share as well because it's some of it is. There are questions. I'll ask some questions about it afterwards. But some of this stuff, given that the landscape is also changing rapidly as well, things that you might have presented a year ago are now you're using different models, for instance, even in that space. So always great to see you poking some stuff, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't quite work because it
worked in the end.
no, which is kind of enough. And that's the thing. Kind of going, hey, if you do this, it could take maybe 45 seconds. If you do this, it'll take 3 minutes, as opposed to us expecting it to be done in 4 seconds, because that's unrealistic, for example.
Yeah,
so.
I'll just add one really, really quick thing to that is that most people just don't realize the immense computing horsepower that OpenAI and Anthropic are using. When they give you an answer in 10 seconds, it's a tremendous amount of compute going on to do that. And what we can do locally are in 10 seconds are going to be much smaller tasks.
Mm.
So
which is why it costs people the amount of money it does, is the truth, isn't it? Because somebody's got to pay for all of that compute. Nobody's going to effectively give it away for free. So
yeah, I mean the current sort of reckoning is that basically if you want to host your FileMaker file and run your stuff in FileMaker, run the FileMaker AI server and have a reasonable sized server behind it, and it's going to be hosted on Windows or Linux with the NVIDIA stuff, you're probably looking at adding another 0 to your hosting cost. The people looking at like a Mac Studio and think it's a really expensive computer. In fact, it's actually one of the more economical ways of hosting large language models, believe it or not. I'm sure Ronnie and Doug are getting kickbacks from the Mac Studio sales actually for this stuff.
Oh, no,
we're trying to, but we're not getting them.
Okay. Anyway,
many thanks, Ian, for that. And yeah, hang around and ask Ian in the virtual bar if you're going to hang around later. I've got more questions. I've got to switch rapidly to Doug, if I may, and let you loose, Doug.
Well, okay, mine's going to be shorter because it's not product marketing, but I'm going to talk about a bit of the studio updates that we've done when we went up for 2025, the stuff that you do have with Connect, and potentially for people that haven't really got Studio yet, so people that are not Claris partners, how you can actually get access to Studio and Connect at no additional cost. So I'll share my screen. Quickly before I forget, the tool that's really cool to actually use to figure out whether you can actually run models on your Mac is LM Studio, because they have a nice feature when you're doing a search now, is they'll be able to actually sort of tell you whether your machine is likely able to actually run that machine. And that's actually kind of cool, because before you had to kind of test and play with it. Now you got this option, and now recently on the update they've done, if it has multiple versions of the model, you can decide which one you want to use. And then if you want to use LM Studio, or if you want to use the AI server, the admin console, you can just get it from here, or you copy the link. It's kind of nice having both of you running at the same time, because sometimes this is kind of better. So Studio basically is we did this update where we are kind of changing the way that we want people to be able to get access to the data that is actually inside your FileMaker solution. So the tendency that we used to have before was you have FileMaker data and you have your Studio account, and then you're going to try to have your Studio data inside the FileMaker, or you're going to try to actually have a synchronization between FileMaker and Studio, and we were using what we call the ESS Plus, which essentially was a translator of trying to get FileMaker text data into JSON format that was then copied into the MongoDB system that we use inside of Studio. The problem that we're basically getting with this is most of the customers and developers were going, well, we have data already inside of FileMaker. We need to actually have access inside of Studio from that FileMaker data. So we don't want to figure out a way to be able to synchronize everything. We want to be able to actually sort of get the data that is inside of FileMaker directly inside of Studio. So the way we did that basically was to create inside of Studio a new tab where you have the data source. The idea is to be able to actually see your Claris data tables, and at the same time your currently FileMaker tables potentially in more systems. And so what we're doing is we're actually using OData. So there's a lot of work that we've done within FileMaker, within Studio, to be able to leverage the OData protocol. The idea essentially behind it was the fact that we created the FileMaker data API, and we kind of created the FileMaker way. whereby even though there's a protocol and using sort of JSON, there was a couple of stuff basically inside it that were very much FileMaker-y that was creating issues. So basically, if you had a portal on your layout and you were calling the field with the field name, will the table name, you had double colon and for parsing purposes, it was really basically a bit of a pain. And the problem that we were getting is because we have customers coming from the outside that don't really learn the data API FileMaker, but want to leverage OData, it's going to be easier for us if we have OData pretty much everywhere on the platform versus not everywhere. So the idea is like, well, we're going to use basically the OData protocol to be able to actually synchronize data between Studio and FileMaker. So essentially what you do in your data sources, and I've got one running, so the file is kind of big because it must be synchronized. All you've got to basically pick out is a new data source. So you need to actually have either FileMaker 22 run, or you actually need to actually have FileMaker 22 running. When we have FileMaker Cloud 22 coming out, you'll be able to sync. Currently, it's only FileMaker server on premise. You need a DNS to be able to actually sort of talk to the servers. You can't actually use an IP address. And then you need to actually have the FMBug data privilege basically assigned to a file to be able to actually access that. So when I actually log into my server, it's going to give me basically a list of all the files I've got access to that have the FMO data on. Of course, it's your being a demo, so it doesn't like it because I'm synchronizing. Anyway, it's basically being on the bottom. It's because of basically issues. Anyway, so when you have the file coming in, it would basically ask you the tables you want to link, and then you can actually create the link. You can decide how to actually put it in FileMaker, and you can do stuff around it. Once you actually got it synchronized, you'll be able to actually quickly basically have data being seen in FileMaker that's modified in Studio, and vice versa, data that's in FileMaker, and you'll be able to actually see in Studio all working together. The one thing that's important is basically the FileMaker server is the source of truth. So if there is any issues with synchronization between Studio and FileMaker, the data that is always accurate is the one on FileMaker. The one thing on top of it is we have built inside the FileMaker server kind of a log to be able to make sure that Studio and FileMaker are synchronized. And whenever you actually restart the FileMaker server, that log is going to basically be out of whack for a bit. So you'll just have to wait for the synchronization to be all set up, and you can view that information inside of Studio. Again, the big thing is if you have files that have a lot of data records. So the table I'm linking has got 25,000 records. And this has been running the synchronization since we started the meeting today, so about 44 minutes. So this is going to take a bit of time to actually synchronize it first, because it has to copy stuff and just make sure everything works properly. But once you have those two linked, then you'll be able to create all the views that you want to basically give. So views basically get created from the hub section, so you can create new hubs or whatever. If I create a new hub, let's start. I'm going to create. Then this one. So at the top, you'll be able to see how many views you have and how many tables have been used. Then from here, I can create a view. So if I create new, let's say this one is a spreadsheet, I can next, and I'll be able to actually select when it's actually synchronized the table that's coming from the FileMaker solution, and I'll be able to actually view my data from here. Other thing that we actually sort of added, which is kind of cool and that everyone was asking for, was the custom view. So essentially, it's basically allowing you to do very similar to a FileMaker layout in Studio as you can. So we have the single view sort of system, so the spreadsheet form. The custom basically view allows you to do a bit more stuff around it. So if I just pick that one, this one, so basically you'll get given a blank page on the options. You could kind of decide how you actually want to do the work. So this is where we're going to create a couple of videos on our community session to be able to actually sort of give you a bit of insight of how it's going to work. Essentially, you're putting frames together inside of one view. So you can have, if you want to basically create a menu frame on the side, and then you want to have a body part in the center, you'll be able to actually get those different views to actually work together. It's using kind of the new calculation engine that we have in Studio, which is very easy to use because it's kind of close to what we do inside of FileMaker, and it allows you to actually create custom views as well. So we're going to try to actually sort of do as much as we can to kind of help people work their way around it, because it allows you to kind of create basic solution for the web for leveraging FileMaker data. So it's not really replacing WebDirect, because there's a lot of stuff that you can do in FileMaker that you won't be able to do in Studio. But if you're trying to do like customer portals or very sort of easy systems where you need maybe a lot of people to be able to get access to, this is where Studio is going to help you as well. The other place we worked on is the user base. So for those that have actually seen it in previous smaller dates, we allow basically people to actually create external entry points. Essentially, is if you have a O2 provider or SAML, you can actually leverage that. And then one thing which is cool is you don't actually have to get people to create Claris IDs. Once you've actually got the account set up, you'll be able to actually give the customer a login URL. When they go into that, they'll use the protocols or the OpenAuth, the SAML, to be able to actually log into the system. And once they log in, they'll be taken directly to the hub. And then they'll be able to actually switch stuff. So the entry will actually be here. You'll be able to actually see who's connected, and you can do a lot of stuff around. So one thing on top of it that we've added is in the learning experience. So essentially is trying to actually help new users to be able to explore as much as they can Claris Studio. So first time you actually connect, you'll have the tutorial. So it's going to take you through all the various stuff, like what is a hub, what a user, how the data sources works, how your different account can actually work. So if you're a Claris partner, you're going to have multiple accounts with your name, move around between the different accounts. And then the learn one will basically take you step by step on how to actually learn the FileMaker data tools system and be able to actually sort of move through the step. And then so whilst we're doing all the work around Claris Studio to actually integrate better with FileMaker with the OData protocol, one of the things we were trying to do is how do we actually integrate Connect as well, so that people can actually start leveraging a bit more the FileMaker connector to get automation run by Connect if required. So we were going to have Connect inside the Studio page, but it was a bit confusing. So when you connect to connection, it's going to open your Claris Connect homepage, and for there you'll be able to actually create new folders and new connectors. So one of the things that we actually released is a new FileMaker connector. So before we had two connectors, we had the Claris FileMaker Cloud and the Claris FileMaker Server. It says deprecated, but they're not being deprecated. They're not. We're not just doing any changes to them because they still rely a lot on the FileMaker data API. So it's all layout based, and it's a bit of a pain. So we're going to change the terminology. So once they're deprecated, it's just going to go. I don't remember the word we're going to use, but basically we'll keep them for as long as that. The one thing we won't be able to do is move or it's transform your connect flows using the old connectors to use a new one. Essentially, it's because we're moving to a data. There's a couple of stuff that actually change inside. But the reason we're actually creating this new sort of central Claris FileMaker connector is that it will be able to actually do triggers and action both on FileMaker Cloud and on FileMaker Server the same way. And it allows you to actually have a lot more advanced actions that we can do. So in terms of creating records, updating records, being able to actually get table names, table information, running script, all that, that's all the stuff using the OData protocol. And in the future, what we're trying to actually get to is to do as much as we can through the OData protocol with that connector. So stuff basically getting like creating new tables, creating new fields, leveraging script inside of FileMaker, all the stuff that we want to do is actually there. And at the same time, it's because we're doing a lot more work on server copies XML, and the XML representation of FileMaker will be accessible will be accessible through Connect. It will be easier to actually leverage the connectors inside of Connect to be able to actually do new layouts in your solution versus doing them directly on the FileMaker solution. So we're kind of leveraging basically the power that we have in Connect. And like Ian was saying with the AI model, you can have stuff running on your machine but the power you're going to get from the cloud in all of instances is going to be very useful when you want to run specific stuff. So potentially in the future, creating layouts automatically using your XML, not doing it on your FileMaker server because that server will never be powerful. Be able to actually leverage an AI model from whatever companies out there and actually get them to actually sort of process the whole thing will make a lot of difference. So this is the long-term sort of vision that we have. It's a lot easier sort of communication between FileMaker, Studio and Connect, and all that one. The other one that we have as well is the Carry Studio. And again, we have the adding more triggers in action. And essentially is whenever you're creating a new thing in Studio, updating records, whatever, it will be able to actually get new stuff. Some of the things we've done is around the user management. So currently is when you're connecting in Studio, the user that you have there are users that are not the same as, well, that basically is your license around FileMaker in Studio is the same one. So if you have a FileMaker user license for 25 users, those 25 users will have the full access of Studio in those page. So you can create 25 users. The other cases is people will be willing to use Studio with anonymous users. So you won't need to actually create a user in here. You'll just be able to actually share the form that you actually create with them. And the idea is to be able to go as well. Sometimes I want to be able to actually sort of create a user for one specific use case in my system. Then I do it, and that's where basically the Studio Connect will allow you to actually do it. You'll be able to actually invite a user, access to a file once they've actually done the changes in the data set, whatever. The form is submitted, and then you can actually remove that user for your system. It's basically stuff that we're working on. We're not imposing basically the limit of users on Studio for the time being. We're trying to see the use cases coming back from the partners. But basically, is we're both trying to actually make sure that you can do whatever you want, but at the same time making sure people do understand what it is. And then we have a couple of new updated connectors that we have inside the Connect. I don't remember which one they are. We're still trying to get the Google Mail one, but we have an issue with Google as well because they keep on changing the system in the background and they don't actually having people access to them. So we're trying to do what we can around them. And we are working at the same time on the custom connectors, because the custom connectors actually is based on a JSON kind of template that is easy to learn, and with the right data or the right API documentation from third parties, you could create easily new connectors. And at first, it was like, well, people are going to have to figure out the JSON, the information we need in the JSON to be able to actually create those and figure out how the API works from the third-party provider. And because now we have AI, and AI is kind of powerful, we're trying to actually kind of play on going as well, because now we have access to those documentations, and at the same time we know what we need in the connector. It might be easier to actually offer a system whereby you tell people, hey, I'm trying to connect to, I know, whatever API that actually exists out there. To be able to do this, we feed them basically sample library of how the JSON needs to work for the connector inside the Claris Connect, and then the two actually work together, and then they create the perfect connector and test it out and see what comes out of it. There's a few samples that if you want to try them out, actually are there, so you can try them out. So if you are a Claris partner through your NFR, you get Claris Studio and Claris Connect. The limit basically that we have on the NFR from Claris partners are you can do pretty much whatever you want. There's no real limit to the account that you have as a partner. If you are a user and you have a valid FileMaker license, so whether you've got annual contract, FileMaker Cloud, or you've got a perpetual license with the maintenance, then you'll get access to Studio. So we'll give you what we call is the new tier system. If you haven't seen those, I'll probably come back another day to actually sort of talk about more about this. But essentially is There's two tiers. There's the entry level, where we give you access to Student Connect, and it's limited in terms of flows or native views that you have in Student Connect. And then we have the max, which is basically is unlimited views inside of Studio, and we give you 50 active flows a month on Connect. For those, until the end of the summer, so early September, everyone who wants to use Student Connect will have the unlimited one. And then after that, we'll see what people can actually do. Just to make sure, if you have an FDS contract, so FileMaker Developer Subscription, you won't get Studio Connect because in the name, it's just a FileMaker Developer Subscription. If you are an SBA provider, for now, you won't get Studio Connect. It will come later on than next year. And then if you have any strange contract between yourself and Claris, then at first, you won't get Student Connect. But if you have a strange contract, we probably already talk to you about how we're going to basically allow you to actually have Studio and Connect in the future. In order to get Student Connect, the easiest way is to install FileMaker Server 2025. And then when you go to the administration part of it, you'll see go to Claris Studio. What it's going to do, basically, it's opening up a URL. And basically what it's putting inside URL your license key. What it's doing is the license key, it will basically look in our server to see who's the license to, the person who's licensed to actually use FileMaker Server. So it could be your Claris partner, it could be your procurement agent, it could be your boss in your company, and you'll basically have the email address so that they can actually log in. If you already actually have a Claris Studio account, if you already have a Claris ID, you'll just have to type your email address. And if you have already a partner account, you'll get the same error because your license isn't valid to get Claris Studio for normal users because you already have it. So basically just says your license isn't available. If you're using as well the ETS license, the ETS license, you'll get the same error at the same time. So just make sure you're using the proper license key for the FileMaker contract that is renewed, and then you'll be able to actually sort of get access to it. If for some reason your license key doesn't work, and you're sure it's an annual maintenance, just go to your support, they'll check it out. But if it's annual, or if you actually have a maintenance contract, then you'll be able to actually use it. I'm just going to check whether the sync is actually finished running. Oh, it did. I can go back. Let me share just quickly. I tried to stop it and go through it. So when I close down the server, basically, if it's worked properly, you'll see that it's been listened properly. If it's failed, you get an error, and it will tell you when it's failing. There's a few cases we've seen that basically it's failing where we have container fields and the stretch containers, but on average, most of the time, it's going to work. So try this one again. So re-log into it. Yeah, I killed the server, so I just wanted to get it to work. But if it's there, you'll be able to actually view it, and then you can create views based on that method. Cool, that was it. Any questions or?
Not a direct question on what you've just said, but thanks, Doug, very much. And hopefully you'll come back and give us an update in September at the FMBug then.
Yep, definitely. Yeah.
So I have a bit to add because I've been using it quite a lot. So when you set up the data source to say, hey, can I have this FileMaker table in Studio? Studio makes a best guess at what the field type is going to be in Studio first off. So it connects it and goes, oh, that looks like a text field, that looks like a number field, oh, that might be a date. And it pulls it in. But for example, I had a query because I had a field that I wanted to be in Studio that had a carriage return in it. And when a text field is brought into Studio, it comes in as a short text field. and therefore it lost the carriage. It just collapsed, the carriage return disappeared, so that it didn't look right. Once you have got the connection made, you can go back and edit that connection, which then gives you the possibility to change the field types in Studio, because they're not sourced from Studio, they're sourced from this hybrid connection thing. So you can change the type of the field to something that could represent the data that you have in FileMaker. So in this particular case, I was able to change the short text type to long text type, and then the carriage returns reappear. But it also means you can do things with date and time fields. If you had a number field, there's this field type in Studio, which is like a star rating system. Because it's a number, you can change the Studio end of the file type, of the field type, to be something else, and then just click sync to resync, and it'll go, oh, okay, now you want it to be one of those. But that's not obvious, because it's a second stage process. After you've kind of made the first connection, is you have to go in and edit it. The other thing, the network error, there is some good documentation about this, because at the moment you have to have the thing turned on your server where you're filtering files by user for the connection to work. Where you filter the files by user, so then you have to log in to even see what files you can log into. That has to be turned on for this connection to work at the moment. There was some error. We were getting network errors when it was trying to connect without that on. It is documented. Hey, if you follow this, then that should work. There's a bit of work going on, I believe, to try and remove that requirement. But it absolutely does. It absolutely does work. And as Doug says, what you have is FileMaker data, the FileMaker data on your FileMaker server as the source of truth, but you can edit the records on both sides and expect that they could end up being updated from one side to the other. So very, very powerful indeed.
Great. That brings us to 9 o'clock exactly.
Timing. It's all about timing, John.
Perfect timing, John. You spoke for exactly the right amount of time to cover the gap. Anyway, that's great. Before I switch the recording off and go to the virtual bar, are there any questions anyone has of any of the presenters tonight that they want to ask and would be useful for other people to hear the answer to? No, a shocking silence.
I'll break the silence.
Oh, good
Apologies,
on you. Thank you.
I missed the first hour. Did you all talk about the what is it? Save record IDs, restore record IDs?
Yes, Tony. And I demoed. There's a, if you haven't seen it, there's a demo file on the Beeswax blog that Steve has written, which demonstrates how that works.
I'll have a look. I might have seen that, but that's a good one. Felt like making some noise here to tell you that at a previous user group, FMBug, I think it was, Vince Manano, we were all playing around with it, and it restores the sort order. So that was pretty cool.
It does, but it doesn't apply the sort.
It does it in a different way. It looks at the ranges, which kind of look like the ranges as described in the snapshot link. I might drop a link to what that looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does it in a different way. Good point. I concur.
Yeah, the point is that anything which is a layout part, which is based on sort order, when you restore the records, you also have to run the sort for something like a summary part to show, because the records are technically semi-sorted, not actually sorted.
Okay.
If you restore it from this, it's really quick. here's a list of records I want. Oh, there you go. There's a list of records. Oh, and then they're in that order as well. But the sort has not been run. So parts which depend on the sort to be run will not show until you have run the sort.
I'll drop the snapshot link for people who haven't seen what it looks like under the hood. Hey, John, earlier you mentioned that you dropped some links. If it's not too much trouble, maybe drop them again, because once again, I was dealing with a customer situation, building up market share.
Okay.
But
they're all in the beginning of the chat, Tony, if you can see.
Okay. I don't see them, but because
they will be
security...
on the FMBug website in
okay, then John, you're off the hook. You're off the hook.
Perfect.
And then, by the way, Jules, that puts the pressure on you now.
But if you want them quicker, ask John.
No, it's all good. Anyway, nice to see everybody.
Yeah, nice to see everyone here. And thank you to all the speakers tonight. It's great. And so much talent and knowledge here, which is fantastic. And good to see it all shared. So great. Thank you. Unless there's anything else, I will switch the recording off and we'll switch to the bar.